Hey everyone, Tactics here. In this video, I'll be going through my simple, easy to execute routes for all 8 dungeons included in the first season of Dragonflight. The goal of these routes is to be as PUG friendly as possible, minimizing the number of difficult pulls and skips needed, as well as creating something that you'll be able to use regardless of whether those are good or bad affix combinations on that week, or if you have the Thundering seasonal affix or not. From a +2 all the way up to a +20, these routes will work. They may not be the most optimal in every single situation, but I think they're reasonable to execute in a PUG environment, which is important for a lot of players. Because of these goals, there are certain areas in some of these dungeons where you may feel more comfortable with the skill level of your group and be able to combine certain pulls together, and I'll try and point those out whenever we come to them, but basically think of these more as a starting point and then adjust according to your needs. If you're looking for more in-depth guides on the dungeons themselves, including important interrupts, trash abilities, how to handle various pulls, and boss mechanics, I have individual guide videos going through all 8 of these dungeons over on my channel, and I'll link the playlist for that as well in the description for you to check out. Throughout the season, I'll also be posting a ton of Mythic Plus and Raid related content, including things like advanced routing guides for more coordinated groups, high key walkthroughs from a tank's perspective, and even normal heroic and mythic raid guides. So if any of those sound like something you'd be interested in seeing, make sure you subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications so you don't miss a single video. Otherwise, let's get started into the routes, starting off with Ruby life pools here. Note that I'll be going through everything in Mythic Dungeon Tools. I'll post the links to all these Mythic Dungeon Tool routes down in the description below if you want to import them for yourself. So starting off the bat here, you basically just drag this big guy on top of other mobs here. Something you may see a lot is lusting this first pull, especially if you add half of the second pull into it. You can lust and nuke everything down before it gets too dangerous. So just keep that in mind. You can do that. You can also basically just chain pull this entire area as you start eliminating the important mobs here. That's going to be the Earthshapers for those that don't know, and you'll be moving through as the Earthshapers die, pulling more, and you can basically just chain pull. You want to hug the right side here to avoid this trash over here, and just pull down toward this area. This is basically going to feel like one big pull for the most part, because you're basically just chaining this whole area. Then you go to the boss, make your way up, and I have you moving right here around the circle clockwise. A couple things you can do. Note the positioning of this dragon. I believe this dragon is actually between these two packs, but he does jump around and pat a little bit. You can technically skip both the dragon mini bosses in this area. Flame Gullet, I feel like people are just going to butt pull him, and he's not as dangerous as the other guy, so I just recommend pulling him. Something you may see here as well is pulling Flame Gullet onto this pack and using your second lust there if it's up. That's going to depend on your key level and how long it's taking you to get to this point, right? But that is an option for you to spend your second bloodlust on. Otherwise, you can just take it a little bit slower and just kill the dragon and then move into the pack after that. One thing I do want to emphasize here is skipping the second dragon, Thunderhead. So these arrows here, they do actually mean something. I didn't just draw them for no reason. Basically, this shows the pat of Thunderhead when you're over in this area. So initially he'll start here, he'll stay there for a little while, then he'll decide to jump up and pat. So he goes down towards this way, up and around this way, back towards where you're crossing over. Then he'll go around these altars and then back to his initial starting spot and hang out there again for a little bit. But what that means is that there's a couple danger zones for pulling him in his pat and a couple safe zones as well. I've denoted X's here for you to look at, both near the 2 Blazebound Destroyers, and that is where you're going to want to tank most of the trash mobs when you're in those areas, and also have most of your party, or all of your party really, standing in order to avoid Thunderhead during his patrol. When you come in this way, group pack 10, go to the altar, stand on the stairs, 11, pull them over to the stairs here, wait for him to be in a good spot in his path, then run across this danger area, and everyone go towards this X by the stairs over here, and pull 12 over to there. Then as soon as he leaves to go on a new path, you can run through here and go straight to the boss safely. If you weren't able to lust over here with the Flame Gullet ad and the Blazebound Destroyer pack, if you pull those together, you can bloodlust on this boss as well. And then we come to one of the very few skips I have in this dungeon, and just skipping all the stuff in this line here. Notice I'm already at 100%, and I've already skipped a little bit downstairs. All this trash up here is unskippable basically, except for the dragons. So I've opted to skip this just because the Tempest Channelers are fairly dangerous mobs. So Invispot this, shroud this, whatever. You may not be able to get quite past these two guys at the end if it's a bad pat. Not the end of the world, just pull them into this 14 pack here. Really not a big deal there. I just had to add this skip in, otherwise you'd just be at like 110%. It would be kind of ridiculous. So skip this if you can. Honestly, in lower keys, it's probably not the end of the world. You can just be at 110%, but that would be a little ridiculous for a route I gave you guys. Then you just clear the rest of this last boss platform, drop your second or your final lust, whatever it is, on to this boss here at 50% when they're both stacked up and together. That's the most dangerous part, so lust there. But that's Ruby Life Pools. Move on to Nokhud. So going over to this first area with Granith at the beginning. And my first recommendation is to pull these two packs together, because as you're coming in, assuming you're coming in right away, these three will be padding towards these four mobs here. So they'll be relatively easy to group up. Just beware, there is a longbow in each of these packs. These guys are the more annoying ones to group up. So focus on trying to get them together if you can, or use displacements if you have them. Death Grip, very, very strong here, but you may not have a DK. Use Nox otherwise. Ring of Peace, also very good for that. But this pack first. Then this is a patrol that goes around the whole boss area, so you want to fight them. Notably for pack 3, you want to kind of pull them inwards a little bit towards the boss spawn area, because this patrol walks right by the pack. And this is a pretty nasty patrol here. They've got a bunch of ranged guys that are just annoying to deal with. Very difficult to group up, and just dangerous and annoying in general. So pull these guys towards the center so you don't accidentally butt pull them. Then do this last pack here, spawn the boss, deal with him, move over towards the lightning area. That's not the lightning area, there it is. You've got the totem guys here, 6, 7, 9, and 10 are the 4 totem groups you have to kill. These guys here are patrolling around. Just kind of pull these gusts literally whenever you can. They don't really do much, so whenever. And I pull these guys. Basically, I tend to pull them into this group when it's only the Stormcaller left, because you killed everything else, assuming they're on a decent pat, of course. But similar idea, you can add them to any of these 3 groups just whenever you've cleared most of it, and if the pat lines up. Fly over to 10, fly over these 2 guys to the boss, kill the boss there. Then you're moving to this final area for the third boss here, and this is where I'm pulling literally everything, because I'm pretty confident this is the easiest trash in the dungeon here. Lots of relatively low health, lots of casts that are either interruptible, stoppable, or not really dangerous whatsoever to murdering you instantly. So that's what I'm doing here. I am adding a bunch of things to these pulls. So this is the first pull I have here. There's 2 guys just beneath it, and these 3 Ohunas are just padding around. Literally add them to whatever pack they happen to fly over when you're fighting something. Don't worry about what pack you're adding it to. I just have it here because that just tends to be where it lines up. But maybe it's some other pack. Could be 14, could be 13, whatever. Just add them to whatever they're there. And I'm just moving along here counterclockwise, killing everything. Notably though, is that we go 16 and then you skip over 19 here and do 17, 18. The reason for that is that the RP for this boss starts once you've killed the 4 soul harvesters, and then 1 person has gone over to trigger the RP. So basically kill the 4 soul harvesters, have 1 person fly, trigger the RP, while everyone else does these pulls like 18 and 19 here. Note, these guys are a pat. So you may want to try and wait for them to get closer to this 4-pack here and this 4-pack here that are stationary. So you may want to do 19 before 18, again, depending on the pats there. So just keep that in mind. And then you just move to the final boss. And again, notably, you can skip all this trash here without using any invis pots or skip items whatsoever. You can just jump around to the left or right of the fence here. Not on a flying mount, of course, you will get ejected, but just jump over on a regular mount and just hug the right side, hug the left side. Either works, I think, but I tend to hug the right side here. And then you can jump over the fence again, over these guys, and then you can walk around to the left or right around these guys, depending on where their pat is. And you skip all this trash without needing to invis whatsoever. So that's definitely a skip I will include no matter what. 2 mini bosses, boss himself, done with the dungeon there. In terms of lust timings, you're probably going to want to do it again on like a big trash pull here. Maybe you could do this with this stuff here, or maybe just these guys combined with these guys as a big lust first pull, potentially on the second boss here then after that, and then maybe on the last boss once you get to the second phase of that final boss. Really going to depend on key level though and your timings in terms of what you're going to be bloodlusting. Moving on, let's go to Azure Vault. This is also a dungeon that's probably going to change a fair bit depending on key level. There's some cool skips in this dungeon, but we're not going to go over that in this PUG route. advanced route though, we'll talk about those cool skips. So I'm going to talk about going right down the middle here. These guys are probably going to be very annoying in PUGs. They still hit pretty hard even after the nerfs. Interrupt or stop those abilities. But basically, let's just do this 4-pack here. Skip all this over here. Don't worry about having too many of those casts to deal with. Then you've got another 4-pack here. Make sure you pull them back a little bit so this whelp doesn't pat into you and you summon all this stuff and instantly die. That would be bad. Then you can hug this left side. After that, jump down here. Do all these, add these together as you're just running around in a circle, whatever. You know, if you need to kill one of these tenders before adding the third one, do that. But basically just pull all this in a chain pull. Do the boss himself. Move down, you've got the 2 guys. Then you're going to the ring here. I have these guys pulled together and these guys pulled together. It's going to depend a little bit on patrols. You may need to like start pulling this pack and then wait for this to patrol a little closer before you can add it, or similar for this one, etc. Right? So just depends on the padding. For the last pack there, move downstairs. I pull these 4 constructs together, and then the pat with the 3-pack here. Again, assuming on pat timings, you may need to do something like if the pat is like here, you could pull this 2-pack with the pat, and then you could just drag this 2-pack onto this 3-pack over here. Depends on the pat area, so just keep that in mind. And then we're doing this room here with the second boss, pulling these guys on top of this 3-pack. This lieutenant pack, he just goes around in a big circle here, and if this 5-pack you pull here pulls with the lieutenant right here, your tank's going to be in for a very bad time, so just be aware of that. Instead, we try and pull this lieutenant mob with his damage increase on top of these caster guys, much easier to deal with there, and then a big pull over here before doing the boss. And you get the big froggy pulls because there's not really much tank damage or random damage going out here. Just the bleeds from these delvers, so you just pull everything, LOS it here, nuke it down, run down the stairs, pull everything, LOS it, nuke it down, run over here, skipping a couple things just for count, go to the end, kill it, and then you got back-to-back bosses there. For looking at lust, again, you're probably going to do a boss lust scenario, so probably lusting on the first boss here, and then kind of, again, depends on when your lust is going to come back up. There's certainly a universe where your lust is back up for this second boss. If it is, great. Lust in that second boss phase in this phase, because I don't believe the first one is long enough for you to get the full lust value, or just kind of lust when you get it, right? That works as well. Technically could do a big pull here in this area as well with bloodlust, and then you're probably lusting on the last boss after that. Next, let's go to Academy, and we are going right here. So right off the bat, you get your buffs. Move to the right. You can run around, tag all this stuff, as well as get these 3 skitterflies. It is possible to avoid these 3 skitterflies padding over here. This is their patrol in the circle area here. So if you tag everything and then you run back to like this area right here, you will never have to deal with this 3-pack here, and they are pretty dangerous on top of already having 3 in this first pull. And so just avoiding them in general, pretty good idea. So that's why I'd recommend tag it all, run back here, similar to the boss. Tag him and pull him back to like this area. You have more than enough space to deal with the boss in this little circle area here, and that lets you avoid these 3 skitterflies. Recommend lusting this first pull as well. This is pretty big. So lust that. Then we move forward here. You've got the single pull, 4 single pulls here. Got the second boss there. Moving forward, you're probably going to have lust maybe around a big pull here, or pull 11 as another big pull there, so that's where you would want to use it. Otherwise, you're just moving through here in a relatively straight line. And again, if you feel like this is too big of a pull, you can break this off a little bit. If you feel like this is too small of a pull, add to it. Keep that in mind. Just a guideline here. You've got the third boss there with Samus. Then you can move back down the bridge here. You've got a big pull here. Kill the group in front of the final boss here. Just watch this patrol where it is when you're running through here. And then you probably will have lust up for the last boss as well. This dungeon is probably going to be a fan favorite is my guess. This is one of the better dungeons in the expansion in my opinion. So hopefully you guys enjoy it as well. Let's get into some of those older dungeons though. We've got Halls of Valor. This is another one where you might see people literally triple pulling right off the top here. Good bloodlust for sure. Then you've got the first boss. For this guy, he just pats back and forth. So you can do literally any of these 3-packs that you want. This left 3-pack is a little bit easier, I would say, because it's all tank damage almost. There's 2 champions versus just having 1 champion and 2 casters, and especially if you have this 2 champion side, you can also drag 4 and 5 on top of each other because there's not too much to deal with in that sense. So that's an advantage of going left as well. Then you have a little LOS pull here, so I just tag these 2 packs and pull them around this corner here. Watching again this pat, we want to avoid as many Stormforge Sentinels as possible. They're very annoying. Then you can pull these guys here and pull 7 all together and move towards Herja. Herja probably your second lust of the dungeon here. Pretty difficult boss. You got a bunch of mini bosses you have to face beforehand. Note that pull 9 isn't actually avoidable anymore. They actually shifted where these shield maidens are standing, so you have to pat through them in order to actually get past this before you can just walk around the wall. Doesn't work anymore. Might work with Mind Soothe, but I haven't tested that, so keep that in mind. Then we move through back here. All this area is empty. Still this padding guy here. Be careful. And then you can just tag this one caster mob into this pack 13 here. Note sometimes this guy is in this pack you did on number 6. That's really not the end of the world, but just keep in mind you may have an extra caster, so just keep an eye out. Watch when you're pulling this pack 6 here if that extra caster is coming or not. Then you move into the beast area and you're pulling dragon here. You may need to have someone who's not your tank tag these 3 bulls here to add them to this dragon pull, just because you don't want to pull the storm drake onto any of the stags, otherwise it gets buffed, so keep that in mind. Then you move over to Fenrir here, pulling the little 4-pack. Down here, you got the wolf bull. This can be pretty dangerous. They'll all have 4 stacks of their damage amp, so make sure your tank is ready for that. Finishing off the boss here, then you get your big speed boost, run out all the way up. I pull these 2 Stormforge Sentinels through all the way up on top of King Tor, just because, again, sitting here cleaving 2 mobs, kind of annoying, kind of a time loss. So pull him up here, cleave him with King Tor, and King Tor specifically because he doesn't actually have a spell cast. He just spawns an ad far away from himself that you can CC. That doesn't get affected by the Inspiring Aura from those Sentinels, so that's why I do that. After those guys are dead, you can then do the kick guy, and then do these guys together, who will then have a kick each, and they'll spawn an ad each that you'll need to either CC or run away from. Then you've got boss and boss. In terms of your other bloodlust here, after Herja, you probably just want to rip it on CD. I'm not sure where it's going to end up, but it might actually end up on this like King Tor Sentinel pull kind of deal. Because honestly, Skovald is a pretty easy fight after the changes to it. And Odin, if you end up getting that 4th lust in on this dungeon, that's probably where you would put that, of course. So it would kind of just depend on your timings again and the key level. So again, maybe not so helpful on some of these lust timings, but it really does depend on like how fast your group is going, the key level of the dungeon, Fort Tyrannical. A lot of nuances to lust timings, but hopefully I can give you a general idea there. Moving on, we have Court of Stars. And right off the top here, you've got, this is the first pull. There's this guy down here that you can like CC and just walk past if you have one of the out of combat CCs. Otherwise, just bring him into this first pull. It's really not the end of the world. Note that the little skip here is much more difficult to accomplish now because they slightly increased the threat radius, it seemed, of the Guardian constructs. So we don't do that anymore. It's probably fine in a coordinated group, but Pug's definitely a little rough. So just go around in the Pug group here, kill this pack down on the docks, kill this pack up here, watch this patrol as well when you're pulling these mana worms. You don't want to pull them all together. And then I have this pack here just because, again, in a Pug group, I have absolutely zero faith in them ever skipping this. Like, in theory, you could only do the sentry with this little pack here and you would skip these guys, but absolutely no way is a Pug group going to accomplish that 9 times out of 10. So I just am getting out in front of that and pulling all this stuff anyways, so you're ready for it. Keep your kicks on the construct there so everything doesn't heal. Just nuke it down and you're good to go. Pulling the 4-pack here. Note the engineering orb, if you want it, can be in here if it's up. So you may need to pull an extra thing or two if you want to actually tag it. That has been significantly nerfed, and I talk about that in my Court of Stars video, so check that out. Moving up, 3-pack, disable all your little pylon watch post thingies, pull the boss, run through here with the Guardian construct, and they're in the demon area, and this is where it's kind of variable depending on, one, the number of professional items that spawn that are usable for you. You may be able to spawn a bunch of these mini bosses without pulling 3 enforcers, which I have listed, or 2, the actual position of where these enforcers spawn, because that is random as well. So this is a hard guideline here. Luckily, there is some extra trash. For example, if you're only going to do 2 enforcers, you can pull some extra trash here. If you know you have coverage to only pull 2 enforcers, you can pull some extra trash here on the docks as well, or in this area over here. Either way, just keep that in mind. This is pretty variable depending on your spawns and your RNG in that dungeon. So this probably will not look exactly like this. You can also pull trash onto enforcers, pull trash onto mini bosses, depending on your group, so keep that in mind. Your lust here is likely going to be a big pull like this one. Honestly, this is probably the more dangerous pull in the dungeon. Maybe first boss on Tyrannical Week, but honestly, it's not too bad. I kind of recommend doing it on this pull here, and then you can probably do it on either the second boss herself or on one of the, like, pulling a mini boss into some other trash pack, pulling an enforcer into another trash pack, that kind of deal, and then you can do it on the final boss as well. That's it for Court, though. Let's get into Shadowmoon. This dungeon's pretty straightforward. There's not too much you can skip here. I use 3-pack right away, and then this guy has a patrol. He's usually patrolling down here, so you can squeeze by to the left. Just want to make sure there is a void spawn that kind of teleports between these 2 packs. Usually this is perfectly fine to do if you just kill this pack relatively quickly. Run through, hug left. You can pull this pack without the other void spawn in it as well, so that's nice. You can run down, kill the 2 spiders, kill the 1 pack in your way. You've got the boss here. This is probably going to be your first Bloodlust. What you're likely going to see in higher keys is like some big pull off the top here with like a void spawn and stuff, and that's what they're going to Bloodlust. But otherwise, just Bloodlust this guy here. Moving through again in a W key kind of line. Trash pack here. These guys summon a few more mobs that just don't give count. Just keep that in mind. This isn't actually a 2-pack. This is actually a 6-pack. Then you go through, boss. Trash pack here. Just watch this guy who patrols around in this area here. May want to pull these guys towards where the boss was a little bit. Then just moving through this area here. There is a way to skip the worms here. Again, not something I'm going to cover in a PUG group. It requires either a shaman or a DK in your group to water walk kind of around. That's probably going to be a thing in high keys, but PUG group, let's calm down, let's relax a little bit on that one. Basically just killing everything in this area. These spiderlings die really fast, so don't really worry about them. Watch these 4 plague bat patrol. These guys go around in a circle here. Can be very bad if you aggro them and they're like really far away and they start shooting you from really far away with their interrupt attack, so be careful when you pull these guys as well. Moving through, boss pack. This is the dangerous pack. You're probably going to pull them back to here and use the LOS as needed around the pulses. On lower keys, you can probably just sit there and live the pulses, not a big deal. Higher keys, especially fortified, you'll probably want to move them to this corner so everyone but your tank can LOS easily to prevent that damage. Then you've got the last boss, so mostly W key. And if you thought this was mostly W key, Temple of the Jade Serpent is all W key. Ignore the percent here, it's just not updated MDT. But basically, you W key this dungeon. You pull literally every trash mob except for these 3 over here in order to get the count you need. I believe this ends at 102, 103% by the end of the dungeon. So really, you could have skipped like a mob or 2 tops, but it's not worth it. Note again, you can LOS the big hit from these Corrupt Living Water guys. Probably not a thing you'll need to do in lower keys, but keep that in mind for higher ones. And we're just grouping them one at a time. Could be lusting here on this big pull. Initially, if you like add another Corrupt Living Water to this big pull, could totally lust this pull. Be nice. Then you pull these guys here, here. First boss, who's drastically changed, by the way. Covered that in my Jade Serpent video. Moving all the way across with your speed buff. Got the 1 pull here. 2 important kicks in this group, as well as some random damage from these guys. Moving through, important kicks on the fish and the Haunting Shaw. And you're just kind of chain pulling in this area as you eliminate kicks. So like as you kill the Haunting Shaws here, you can totally chain pull these guys onto the Talking Fish. As these guys die, you can chain pull over here onto the Haunting Shaw and the Songbird Queen. As the 2 interrupts here die, you can pull the Songbird Queen onto these guys here in the back. Just kind of chain pulling throughout this area. You can have someone kill the scroll down here early to trigger the RP for the boss. Just don't trigger it too early because they insta aggro you no matter where you are in this room. So keep that in mind. Moving through here, pull this little mini boss onto the mobs here, kill all that stuff, and then pull these mobs kind of as you see fit. Note that this does patrol around this room in a big circle, so you may need to kind of watch your positioning here. You don't want to pull extra mobs as well. Fear's in this area as well. That's going to be pain for sure. If that ever goes off, it's almost an instant wipe, so keep that in mind. You can make use of the LOS here if you really want to. Just depends on what you're pulling and in what order. Kind of combine these pulls again as you see fit. You will probably want to be bloodlusting on Lou Flameheart here, specifically in the Jade phase from I believe 70 to 30%. That's probably where you're going to want to lust because that's the most dangerous phase of the boss fight. There, definitely an argument though to lust earlier if it came up earlier. If you did lust that first pull, it might have come up over here, but actually this dungeon's pretty quick, so it's kind of unlikely. Your lust is probably coming up in like this area, so you could do a big pull with bloodlust here if you have enough kicks, but that requires a bit more coordination, so again, keep that in mind. And then maybe you'd have lust up for the last boss, but in general, this is a pretty short dungeon overall, much shorter than even the timer kind of gives credit for, so you may only get like 2 lusts on this dungeon overall. Once you kill this trash, you got the boss. Then you got this 3-pack in front of the final boss, dealing with the final boss there. But there we have it, guys. 8 Simple, easy to execute, PUG-friendly routes. If you found this video useful, make sure to give it a like and hit that subscribe button. It's free to do, and it really does help me out. As I mentioned earlier, I have those in-depth guides on all these dungeons linked in the description below over on my channel, and I have a ton of other content planned throughout Season 1 you don't want to miss out on. Mythic Plus, raiding, even tanking in general, so be on the lookout for new videos there. I'm also going to be streaming a ton once the season hits, so check me out over on my Twitch channel at Tactics, where I do high keys and mythic raiding as a tank. And if you have any questions about anything, I'll be more than happy to answer them either over there or down in the comments below. Otherwise, thanks everyone so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.